They called for immediate formation at the decommission ceremony when the combat veteran unit was being officially disbanded. No exceptions, no substitutions. Protocol was clear until Private First Class Sarah Valor Chun stepped forward from the crowd of spectators. Her voice carried unexpected authority. "Sir, she belongs up there." The soldier they had forgotten to include in the honor formation had just been recognized by every member of her unit as the one who had saved their lives more times than anyone could count. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories that reveal how true heroism often goes unrecognized until the moment it demands acknowledgement, consider subscribing for more content that explores the extraordinary courage of those who serve without expectation of recognition. The crisp autumn morning cast long shadows across the parade ground at Fort Braxton when Colonel Harrison Mitchell entered the ceremony preparation area at 0630 hours. The base honor guard maintained their precise formations, uniforms pressed to perfection and boots polished to mirror brightness in preparation for the formal decommission ceremony. Mitchell moved with the measured pace of a career infantry officer, his untouched coffee cooling as he approached Sergeant Major Elena Rodriguez at the formation coordination station. "Status report," he said, his voice carrying the weight of 31 years of military leadership and ceremonial precision. Sergeant Major Rodriguez straightened to attention, her clipboard containing detailed formation charts and personnel assignments. "All honor formation personnel accounted for, sir." Reviewing final positions for the 3rd Battalion, 75th Infantry Regiment decommission ceremony. She gestured toward the parade ground where soldiers were conducting final rehearsals. Ceremonial formation includes all decorated combat veterans from the unit's 3 deployments, arranged by rank and length of service. Mitchell nodded, studying the formation layout. "Families and dignitaries?" "Seating arrangements confirmed for 230 family members, sir. Congressional delegation, Department of Army representatives, and local officials all accounted for. Media coordination completed with Public Affairs Office." The colonel's expression reflected the solemnity of the occasion. The 3rd Battalion, 75th Infantry Regiment represented one of the most distinguished combat units in recent military history, with service records spanning multiple theaters of operation and numerous commendations for exceptional performance under fire. Their decommission ceremony would mark the end of an era in military excellence. Weather forecast: clear skies, temperature 62 degrees, winds calm, sir. Optimal conditions for outdoor ceremony. Mitchell's eyes scanned the preparation area where soldiers were making final adjustments to uniforms and equipment. Continue final preparations. Ensure all personnel understand their ceremonial responsibilities. As Rodriguez coordinated the remaining details, Mitchell stepped away to review the official ceremony program. This wouldn't be the first distinguished unit he had seen decommissioned, but the 3rd Battalion held special significance in the military community. Their combat record and unit cohesion had become legendary among infantry formations. 40 minutes later, with family members and dignitaries taking their assigned seating and the honor formation moving into position, Mitchell made his way to the reviewing stand. "Sergeant Major, initiate ceremonial formation. All personnel to positions." The ceremonial music began throughout the parade ground where Staff Sergeant David "Rock" Thompson was making final uniform adjustments in the preparation tent. His head turned toward the sound of the approaching ceremony, and within moments he was moving toward his assigned position in the honor formation, carrying himself with the bearing that came from 3 combat deployments and numerous decorations for valor. Corporal Maria Angel Santos, his former squad member for the past 18 months, was already moving toward the formation when she noticed someone missing from the planned arrangement. Formation call: all decorated personnel to ceremonial positions. Decommission ceremony commencing in 10 minutes. Came the announcement over the base public address system. Neither veteran spoke as they quickly verified their ceremonial placement, checking position assignments with the automatic precision that came from countless formal ceremonies and parade formations. Only when they were reviewing the honor formation roster did Santos break the focused silence. "Where's Chun?" she asked, scanning the formation for their missing squad member. Thompson shook his head, checking his printed formation assignment. "She's not listed on the honor formation roster. Must be in the audience section with families." Third deployment with us, Santos noted with concern. Multiple decorations saved half the squad during that IED incident in Kandahar. Someone made an administrative error, Thompson replied, though his expression suggested the oversight bothered him significantly. Staff Sergeant Thompson had earned his call sign Rock, not from physical toughness, but from his unwavering reliability and attention to detail that had kept his soldiers alive through multiple dangerous situations. Among the infantry veterans, his reputation for ensuring no one was forgotten or left behind had become legendary. As they approached their assigned positions in the honor formation, Thompson performed his standard ceremonial inspection with characteristic thoroughness, ensuring every aspect of military bearing and uniform appearance met the standards expected for such a significant ceremony. Behind him, Santos conducted similar preparations, though with noticeably less systematic attention to minor details. "Remember Helmand?" Santos asked through their informal communication as they settled into formation spacing. "Different situation," Thompson replied curtly, referring to a ceremony 6 months prior when administrative errors had resulted in several decorated veterans being excluded from recognition. "That was a mistake. This feels deliberate." As the honor formation established final positioning and ceremony officials took their places, neither veteran noticed the senior officer observing from the family seating area. Retired Brigadier General Patricia Hayes watched the formation deployment with an expression of growing concern, then spoke quietly to the ceremony coordinator beside her. "Where is Private First Class Chen? She should be in that formation." The honor formation completed their positioning, received final ceremonial instructions, and settled into the disciplined bearing required for formal military ceremonies. From their positions, they could observe the entire parade ground with its mixture of active duty personnel, veterans, family members, and distinguished guests. In the ceremony control area, Colonel Mitchell stood with arms crossed, reviewing the final formation layout against the approved ceremony program. "Time to ceremony commencement," he asked. "5 minutes, sir," Rodriguez replied. "All personnel in position, all officials present, media teams ready for broadcast." Mitchell's expression reflected satisfaction with the ceremonial preparations. "Proceed with opening honors." The ceremony began with traditional military honors while Private First Class Sarah Valor Chun sat in the family seating section, watching her former unit receive recognition for their exceptional service record. Her dress uniform displayed the same decorations as many of the soldiers in the honor formation, but her position among the audience rather than with her unit suggested an administrative oversight that seemed increasingly significant as the ceremony progressed. Chun had earned her call sign Valor, not through dramatic heroics, but through consistent demonstration of courage under fire and willingness to risk herself for others without regard for personal recognition. Among her unit members, her reputation for selfless service and tactical excellence had made her invaluable during their most dangerous missions. As the ceremony continued with formal presentations and unit citations, Chun maintained professional composure despite the obvious exclusion from the honor formation that included her peers and fellow veterans. Her presence in the audience rather than with her unit represented either administrative error or deliberate oversight. "Ladies and gentlemen," Colonel Mitchell announced to the assembled audience, "we gather today to honor the exceptional service of the 3rd Battalion, 75th Infantry Regiment, whose combat record and unit excellence represent the finest traditions of the United States Army." The formal presentation continued with detailed recitation of unit achievements, deployment histories, and collective decorations earned through 3 combat rotations. The honor formation stood at attention while their service record was read to the assembled audience of families, officials, and fellow service members. This unit's combat effectiveness and unit cohesion have been tested under the most challenging conditions our military has faced in recent decades, Mitchell continued. Their performance in urban combat, counterinsurgency operations, and direct action missions has set standards for infantry excellence that will influence military training for years to come. As the ceremony progressed through formal recognition of unit leadership and presentation of ceremonial colors, Staff Sergeant Thompson began to notice increasing attention from family members in the audience directed toward the seating section where Chun was positioned. "Is that Private Chen?" Santos asked quietly, recognizing their former squad member among the family seating rather than in the honor formation where unit veterans were being recognized. Thompson confirmed the identification while maintaining ceremonial bearing. She should be up here with us. The realization that a decorated combat veteran from their unit had been excluded from the honor formation began to circulate among the soldiers in the ceremonial lineup. The oversight seemed increasingly problematic as the ceremony continued with detailed recognition of individual achievements and unit accomplishments. The soldiers you see before you today, Colonel Mitchell announced, represent not only individual excellence, but collective achievement that has defined this unit's reputation for effectiveness under fire and commitment to mission accomplishment. During the formal presentation of unit colors and reading of commendations, several family members in the audience began to recognize the discrepancy between the soldiers being honored and those they knew had served with equal distinction but were excluded from recognition. Mrs. Angela Thompson, Staff Sergeant Thompson's wife, leaned toward her neighbor and asked quietly, "Isn't that Sarah Chin? Why isn't she up there with David's unit?" Similar conversations began throughout the family seating as parents, spouses, and relatives of the honored soldiers recognized Chun as someone who had been frequently mentioned in letters and phone calls as an integral member of their loved one's unit. The ceremony continued with formal presentations while the growing awareness of Chin's exclusion from the honor formation created increasing unease among both the audience and the soldiers being recognized. What should have been a straightforward celebration of unit achievement was becoming complicated by questions about who was being recognized and who was being overlooked. These soldiers have demonstrated extraordinary courage, tactical excellence, and commitment to their fellow service members that represents the highest standards of military professionalism. Mitchell continued, unaware of the growing concern among both formation members and audience about the apparent oversight in recognition. As the ceremony reached the portion dedicated to individual recognition and presentation of awards, Staff Sergeant Thompson made a decision that would fundamentally alter the nature of the event. Rather than maintaining ceremonial silence, he spoke with sufficient volume to be heard throughout the formation and audience. "Sir, request permission to address an oversight in the honor formation," Thompson announced, his voice carrying across the parade ground with unmistakable authority. Colonel Mitchell paused in his presentation, surprised by the interruption during a formal ceremony. "Staff Sergeant Thompson, state your concern." "Sir, Private First Class Sarah Chun is present in the audience, but absent from the honor formation despite serving 3 combat deployments with this unit and earning multiple decorations for valor under fire. She should be recognized with her unit." This statement created immediate attention throughout the ceremony as audience members and formation soldiers alike focused on the apparent administrative error that had excluded a decorated veteran from appropriate recognition. Colonel Mitchell looked toward the ceremony coordinator with visible confusion. "Sergeant Major Rodriguez, verify the honor formation roster against unit personnel records." As Rodriguez consulted her documentation, retired Brigadier General Hayes stood from the audience seating and approached the ceremony platform. Her presence commanded immediate attention from all ceremony participants and officials. "Colonel Mitchell, I can verify that Private First Class Chin served with distinction in this unit and earned recognition that qualifies her for inclusion in this honor formation," Hayes announced with unmistakable authority. The ceremony had suddenly transformed from routine recognition to a situation requiring immediate correction of apparent administrative oversight. Mitchell found himself managing both ceremonial responsibilities and personnel accountability in front of hundreds of observers and media representatives. "Private First Class Chun, report to the honor formation," Mitchell announced after consulting with Rodriguez and confirming the oversight. Chun rose from her position in the audience seating and moved toward the honor formation with professional bearing, despite the unusual circumstances of being called forward during an active ceremony. Her movement toward the formation created spontaneous reaction throughout the audience. As Chun approached the honor formation, Staff Sergeant Thompson stepped slightly out of position to make space for her proper placement according to rank and service record. His action was immediately followed by other soldiers in the formation adjusting their positions to accommodate their missing unit member. "Welcome back where you belong," Santos said quietly as Chun took her position in the formation, finally recognized alongside the unit members with whom she had served. But the significance of the moment extended beyond simple administrative correction. As Chun took her place in the honor formation, something unprecedented began to happen among the audience members and ceremony participants. Mrs. Thompson began clapping from the family seating section, her applause recognizing not just the correction of the oversight, but the principle that all service deserved acknowledgement. Her applause was immediately joined by other family members who had noticed the exclusion and were relieved to see it corrected. The applause spread throughout the family seating as parents, spouses, and relatives demonstrated their approval of ensuring that all veterans received appropriate recognition for their service and sacrifice. But most significantly, the applause was joined by members of the honor formation itself. Despite standing at ceremonial attention during a formal military ceremony, soldiers began applauding their unit members' inclusion in the recognition she had earned. Staff Sergeant Thompson was the first soldier to break ceremonial bearing to applaud Chen's recognition, followed immediately by Corporal Santos and other soldiers who had served alongside her. Within moments, the entire honor formation was applauding despite the breach of ceremonial protocol. Colonel Mitchell found himself presiding over a ceremony that had evolved beyond formal recognition into spontaneous demonstration of unit cohesion and mutual respect among veterans who refused to allow one of their own to be overlooked or forgotten. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mitchell announced, recognizing the significance of what was occurring, "you are witnessing the essence of military unit cohesion. These soldiers refuse to accept recognition for themselves while one of their own is excluded from the honor they all earned together." The spontaneous applause continued for several minutes, representing not just correction of administrative oversight but affirmation of the values that had made the 3rd Battalion an exceptional military unit. The soldiers being honored were demonstrating that their excellence came from collective achievement rather than individual recognition. As the applause gradually subsided, Chen stood in her proper position within the honor formation, finally receiving the recognition that her service record and unit contributions had earned. But the impact of the moment extended far beyond her individual inclusion. The ceremony continued with renewed significance as Colonel Mitchell proceeded with formal recognition of unit achievements, but now with complete representation of the veterans who had earned those distinctions. The spontaneous demonstration of unit loyalty had transformed routine ceremony into powerful affirmation of military values. The unit you see before you today demonstrates not only individual excellence, but the collective commitment that defines military service at its finest, Mitchell continued. Their refusal to accept recognition while one of their own was excluded shows the character that made them an exceptional combat unit. The formal presentation of decorations and commendations proceeded with enhanced meaning as each award recognized not just individual achievement, but the unit cohesion that had enabled their collective success under the most challenging circumstances. When the ceremony reached the presentation of unit colors and final recognition, Colonel Mitchell made an additional announcement that reflected the significance of what had occurred. Private First Class Sarah Chun will receive special recognition for exemplary service that was inadvertently overlooked in the original ceremony planning. Her contributions to unit effectiveness and commitment to fellow service members represent the values that define this distinguished unit. The presentation of Chin's individual recognition created another round of applause from both the audience and the honor formation, but this time it was planned and appropriate rather than spontaneous protest against oversight. As the ceremony concluded with traditional military honors and dismissal of the formation, the impact of the spontaneous demonstration began to resonate throughout the military community. Video recordings of soldiers breaking ceremonial protocol to ensure recognition for their unit member would become viral demonstrations of military values and unit loyalty. The incident was immediately analyzed by military leadership as an example of how formal ceremonies should ensure complete and accurate recognition of all personnel who had earned acknowledgement. The oversight that had excluded Chun from initial recognition prompted comprehensive review of ceremony planning procedures. Media coverage of the event focused not just on the unit's distinguished service record, but on the demonstration of loyalty and refusal to accept incomplete recognition that had characterized the soldiers' response to the oversight. Chin's recognition became a case study in how administrative errors could inadvertently create situations that actually demonstrated the values and character that made military units effective under combat conditions. The spontaneous applause from both audience and formation members was analyzed as evidence of the strong unit relationships and mutual respect that had enabled the 3rd Battalion's exceptional performance during deployment operations. Military ceremony planners used the incident to develop improved procedures for ensuring complete and accurate recognition of all personnel who had earned inclusion in formal honors and recognition events. The incident became part of leadership training curricula as an example of how junior personnel could appropriately address oversights in formal situations while maintaining respect for authority and ceremonial dignity. Chin's exclusion and subsequent recognition highlighted the importance of thorough personnel record review during ceremony planning to ensure that all qualified personnel received appropriate acknowledgement for their service and achievements. The soldiers' willingness to break ceremonial protocol to ensure recognition for their unit member became an example of how military values should guide behavior even when it meant challenging formal procedures. The family members' spontaneous applause demonstrated the importance of including military families in recognition events and ensuring that they understood who was being honored and why their recognition was significant. The ceremony coordinator's quick response to correct the oversight became a model for how ceremony officials should handle unexpected situations while maintaining the dignity and significance of formal recognition events. Retired Brigadier General Hayes's intervention demonstrated the role that senior leaders could play in ensuring appropriate recognition and mentoring junior personnel in understanding military values and traditions. The media's coverage of the incident focused attention on the importance of recognizing all service members who had earned acknowledgement rather than inadvertently overlooking individuals whose contributions were equally significant. The incident prompted military personnel offices to develop improved procedures for verifying ceremonial participation. Rosters against complete service records to prevent similar oversights in future recognition events. Chin's response to being called forward during the ceremony became an example of how service members should handle unexpected recognition with professional bearing and appropriate humility. The honor formation's adjustment to accommodate Chin's inclusion demonstrated the flexibility and adaptability that characterized effective military units under changing circumstances. The ceremony's transformation from routine recognition to demonstration of unit values created lasting impact on all participants and observers, reinforcing the significance of collective achievement over individual recognition. The incident became part of military history as an example of how formal ceremonies could be enhanced rather than disrupted by spontaneous demonstrations of the values they were intended to celebrate. Military chaplains used the ceremony as an example of how service members could demonstrate moral courage by ensuring that recognition was complete and appropriate rather than accepting partial acknowledgement. The soldiers' collective response to the oversight became a case study in how military units could maintain their integrity and values even during formal ceremonies, where protocol normally restricted individual initiative. The applause from both formation members and audience created a template for how military communities could appropriately express approval for actions that upheld military values and ensured fair treatment of all personnel. Chin's service record was subsequently reviewed and resulted in additional recognition that had been previously overlooked, demonstrating how attention to individual cases could reveal broader patterns of inadequate acknowledgement. The ceremony's impact extended beyond the immediate participants to influence military ceremony planning throughout the service, ensuring that future recognition events would include comprehensive verification of personnel eligibility and inclusion. The spontaneous nature of the soldiers' response to the oversight demonstrated the strength of unit relationships and shared values that had made the 3rd Battalion an effective combat organization. The family members' understanding of who should have been recognized revealed the extent to which military families were informed about and invested in the service and achievements of their loved ones' unit members. The incident created opportunities for discussion about the importance of recognizing all contributions to military success rather than focusing only on the most visible or highly ranked personnel. The ceremony's evolution from administrative oversight to demonstration of military values created a powerful example of how challenges could be transformed into opportunities to reinforce organizational principles. Chen's inclusion in the honor formation ultimately enhanced rather than disrupted the ceremony's significance, demonstrating how corrections of oversights could strengthen rather than diminish formal recognition events. The soldiers' willingness to break protocol to ensure appropriate recognition became legendary within the military community as an example of how adherence to values should take precedence over strict adherence to procedures when the two conflicted. Military leadership used the incident to emphasize the importance of ensuring that all personnel who had earned recognition received appropriate acknowledgement rather than allowing administrative convenience to determine who was honored. The ceremony's lasting impact on military culture included renewed emphasis on thorough preparation for recognition events and verification that all qualified personnel were included in appropriate honors and ceremonies. 3 months after the ceremony, Chen was selected for promotion ahead of her peers based partly on the attention drawn to her service record by the recognition she had finally received at the decommission ceremony. The unit members who had applauded her inclusion were commended for their demonstration of military values and unit loyalty, though some received minor counseling about maintaining ceremonial protocol during formal events. Staff Sergeant Thompson received special recognition for his initiative in addressing the oversight despite the potential risk to his career for interrupting a formal ceremony attended by senior officials and media representatives. The ceremony footage became required viewing at military leadership development courses as an example of how moral courage could be demonstrated in unexpected circumstances and how unit cohesion influenced individual behavior. Chen's subsequent assignments included roles in ceremony planning and personnel recognition, where her experience with being overlooked informed her efforts to ensure comprehensive and accurate recognition for all qualified personnel. The 3rd Battalion's legacy was enhanced rather than diminished by the ceremony incident, with their demonstration of unit loyalty and refusal to accept incomplete recognition becoming part of their distinguished history. Military families gained increased confidence that their service members' contributions would be recognized, and that the military community would ensure appropriate acknowledgement even when administrative errors initially created oversights. The ceremony planners implemented new procedures requiring multiple verifications of personnel rosters against service records, with specific attention to ensuring that no qualified personnel were inadvertently excluded from recognition events. Chen's story became part of military recruiting materials as an example of how service members supported each other and ensured that contributions were recognized regardless of rank or visibility within the organization. The incident influenced military award and recognition policies to include provisions for addressing oversights and ensuring that corrected recognition carried the same significance as originally planned acknowledgement. Military historians documented the ceremony as an example of how spontaneous demonstrations of military values could enhance rather than disrupt formal events when they supported the principles that formal ceremonies were intended to celebrate. The soldiers' response to the oversight became a case study in leadership courses about how collective action could address individual injustices while maintaining respect for authority and organizational structure. Chen's experience informed military personnel policies regarding review procedures for personnel transitions, ensuring that departing service members receive complete and accurate recognition for their contributions. The ceremony's impact on military culture included reinforced expectations that all service members would advocate for appropriate recognition of their peers rather than accepting incomplete acknowledgement of collective achievements. 5 years later, Major Sarah Chun was selected to lead the Army's Recognition and Ceremonies Division, where her personal experience with oversight and correction informed comprehensive improvements to military recognition procedures. The ceremony became an annual case study at the Army War College, where senior officers analyzed the leadership decisions made by personnel at all levels during the incident and their long-term impact on military culture. Chen's promotion to senior leadership positions was attributed partly to the visibility her story had gained through the ceremony incident, but primarily to the consistent excellence and unit loyalty that had originally earned her the recognition she had nearly missed. The soldiers who had broken protocol to applaud her inclusion were tracked throughout their subsequent careers, with many receiving accelerated promotions based on their demonstrated commitment to military values over procedural compliance. The ceremony footage was archived as part of military history collections, serving as a permanent reminder of how individual courage and collective action could ensure that recognition was complete and appropriate. Military ceremony procedures implemented as a result of the incident prevented thousands of similar oversights over the following years, ensuring that service members' contributions were consistently recognized regardless of administrative convenience. Chen's legacy extended beyond her personal recognition to institutional improvements that ensured future generations of service members would receive comprehensive acknowledgement for their contributions to military success. The 3rd Battalion's demonstration of unit loyalty during their decommission ceremony became legendary within the military community, inspiring similar acts of collective advocacy for appropriate recognition in subsequent military events. The incident's documentation and military training materials ensured that future leaders understood the importance of thorough preparation for recognition events and the courage required to address oversights when they occurred. Chen's subsequent career in military recognition and ceremonies enabled her to implement systemic improvements based on her personal experience with oversight and correction, creating lasting positive impact on military personnel policies. The ceremony's transformation from administrative oversight to demonstration of military values created a permanent example of how challenges could be addressed through collective action while maintaining respect for military structure and authority. Military families' confidence in recognition procedures was enhanced by witnessing how the military community ensured appropriate acknowledgement even when initial planning had created oversights or exclusions. The soldiers' spontaneous applause became symbolic of military unit cohesion and mutual support, representing the values that enabled military effectiveness under the most challenging operational circumstances. Chen's story continued to inspire military personnel to advocate for appropriate recognition of their peers while maintaining professional bearing and respect for military hierarchy and procedures. The ceremony's lasting impact on military culture reinforced expectations that all service members would receive recognition commensurate with their contributions, regardless of rank, visibility, or administrative convenience. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chun retired after 28 years of distinguished service, having transformed from an overlooked soldier in a decommission ceremony to one of the most influential advocates for comprehensive military recognition policies. Her career progression from excluded ceremony participant to senior leader responsible for military recognition procedures demonstrated how individual experiences could inform systemic improvements that benefited entire generations of service members. The ceremony where she had nearly been forgotten became the foundation for a career dedicated to ensuring that no service member's contributions would be overlooked or undervalued by administrative oversight or institutional convenience. The soldiers who had advocated for her inclusion continued to serve with distinction, carrying forward the values demonstrated during that ceremony throughout their subsequent military careers and leadership positions. The 3rd Battalion's legacy was permanently enhanced by their demonstration that unit excellence included ensuring complete and appropriate recognition for all members rather than accepting partial acknowledgement of collective achievements. The ceremony's documentation in military history ensured that future generations of service members would understand the importance of advocating for comprehensive recognition while maintaining respect for military values and institutional structure. Chen's transformation from overlooked soldier to influential leader became a permanent reminder that individual experiences of oversight or exclusion could be transformed into opportunities for systemic improvement that benefited entire organizations. The applause that had recognized her inclusion in the honor formation echoed through decades of subsequent military ceremonies, where comprehensive preparation and verification ensured that all qualified personnel received appropriate acknowledgement for their service and sacrifice. The immediate aftermath of the ceremony created ripple effects throughout the military community that extended far beyond the parade ground at Fort Braxton. Within hours of the event, video footage of soldiers breaking ceremonial protocol to ensure recognition for their unit member had been shared across military social media networks, creating widespread discussion about unit loyalty and appropriate recognition procedures. Military family support groups used the ceremony as an example of how service members advocated for each other, reinforcing confidence that their loved ones would be supported and recognized appropriately regardless of administrative oversights or institutional convenience. The ceremony coordinator, Sergeant Major Rodriguez, initiated immediate review of all recognition procedures to identify potential systemic issues that could lead to similar oversights in future ceremonies. Her analysis revealed multiple cases where administrative convenience had taken precedence over comprehensive recognition. Colonel Mitchell's after-action report on the ceremony became required reading for military personnel responsible for planning recognition events, emphasizing the importance of thorough preparation and the flexibility to address oversights when they were identified. The spontaneous applause from both formation members and audience became a case study in military leadership courses, demonstrating how collective action could address individual injustices while maintaining respect for military hierarchy and institutional structure. Chin's exclusion from the original honor formation prompted comprehensive review of personnel, databases, and recognition procedures across multiple military installations, resulting in identification of hundreds of similar oversights that were subsequently corrected. Military historians documented the ceremony as an example of how institutional failures could be transformed into opportunities for demonstrating military values, creating lasting positive impact on military culture and recognition procedures. The soldiers who had applauded Chin's inclusion were interviewed by military leadership development researchers, who documented their decision-making processes and motivations for breaking ceremonial protocol to support their unit member. Chin's subsequent assignments included roles in military personnel management and recognition procedures, where her personal experience with oversight informed her efforts to prevent similar exclusions for other service members. The ceremony footage was incorporated into military ethics training curricula, demonstrating how moral courage could be exercised within military structure while maintaining respect for authority and institutional procedures. Military chaplains used the ceremony as an example of how service members could demonstrate collective responsibility for ensuring appropriate recognition while maintaining professional bearing and military courtesy. The incident influenced military personnel policies regarding ceremony planning, requiring multiple verification steps and senior leader review to ensure comprehensive inclusion of all qualified personnel in recognition events. Chin's story became part of military recruiting materials as an example of how the military community supported individual service members and ensured that contributions were recognized regardless of rank or administrative convenience. The ceremony's impact on military families included increased confidence that their service members' achievements would be acknowledged and that the military community would advocate for appropriate recognition when institutional processes failed. Military personnel offices implemented new procedures requiring independent verification of ceremony rosters against complete service records, with specific protocols for addressing discrepancies when they were identified. The soldiers' collective response to Chin's oversight became legendary within the military community, inspiring similar acts of unit loyalty and mutual support in subsequent military events and ceremonies. Chin's experience informed military award and recognition policies to include provisions for retroactive recognition and correction of administrative oversights that excluded qualified personnel from appropriate acknowledgement. The ceremony became an annual case study at military professional development courses, where personnel analyzed the leadership decisions made at all levels and their long-term impact on military culture and institutional procedures. Military leadership development programs incorporated the ceremony as an example of how junior personnel could appropriately challenge institutional decisions while maintaining respect for military hierarchy and command structure. The incident's documentation and military training materials ensured that future ceremony planners understood the importance of comprehensive preparation and the courage required to address oversights when they occurred. Chin's promotion ahead of her peers was attributed to the visibility her service record had gained through the recognition ceremony, but her subsequent performance validated the distinction her unit members had recognized. The ceremony's transformation from routine recognition to demonstration of military values created lasting impact on all participants, reinforcing the significance of collective achievement over individual recognition and institutional convenience. Military families' understanding of ceremony significance was enhanced by witnessing how the military community ensured comprehensive recognition even when initial planning had created exclusions or administrative oversights. The soldiers' spontaneous applause became symbolic of military unit cohesion and mutual support, representing the values that enabled military effectiveness under challenging operational circumstances and institutional pressures. Chen's story continued to inspire military personnel to advocate for comprehensive recognition of their peers while maintaining professional bearing and respect for military procedures and command authority. The ceremony's lasting impact on military culture reinforced expectations that all service members would receive recognition commensurate with their contributions, regardless of rank, visibility, or administrative convenience. 3 years after the ceremony, Chen was selected for officer candidate school based on her demonstrated leadership potential and the attention her story had brought to her service record and professional capabilities. As a newly commissioned second lieutenant, Chen was assigned to military personnel management, where her experience with recognition oversight informed her efforts to improve ceremony planning and personnel acknowledgement procedures. Her first assignment as an officer involved developing comprehensive training programs for military personnel responsible for ceremony planning, ensuring that future recognition events would include systematic verification of all qualified participants. The training programs she developed based on her ceremony experience became standard curricula at multiple military education institutions, influencing ceremony planning procedures throughout the military community. Her undergraduate thesis, completed while serving as an officer, provided comprehensive analysis of military recognition procedures and their impact on service member morale and unit cohesion. The ceremony procedures she had influenced were adopted as military standards for recognition events, ensuring that her experience with oversight would prevent similar exclusions for future service members. Her promotion to first lieutenant came with assignment as the lead coordinator for military recognition policy development, a new position created partly in response to the issues her ceremony experience had revealed. The administrative procedures she had experienced were systematically reviewed and improved, saving the military significant resources while ensuring comprehensive recognition for thousands of service members over subsequent years. Her case study was incorporated into military academy curricula, where future officers studied her experience and the institutional responses that had emerged from her ceremony exclusion and subsequent recognition. As a captain, she was assigned to Pentagon staff positions, where she advised senior leadership on policies related to military recognition, ceremony planning, and personnel acknowledgement procedures. Her memoir, when published after her military service, became required reading at military leadership courses and was translated into multiple languages for use by Allied military forces worldwide. The ceremony where she had been initially excluded was commemorated with annual recognition events that emphasized comprehensive inclusion and unit loyalty as fundamental military values. Her techniques for advocating appropriate recognition were incorporated into leadership training for military personnel at all levels, significantly improving recognition procedures and personnel advocacy throughout the military. The Distinguished Service Medal she eventually received was presented in a ceremony that included the original unit members who had advocated for her inclusion in the honor formation years earlier. Her legacy extended far beyond individual recognition to fundamental changes in how the military planned recognition events and ensured comprehensive acknowledgement of all qualified personnel regardless of administrative convenience. Major Sarah Chun retired after 22 years of distinguished service, having transformed from an overlooked ceremony participant to one of the most influential advocates for comprehensive military recognition policies and procedures. The ceremony techniques, recognition procedures, and personnel advocacy methods she had influenced during her career continued to impact military recognition events decades after her retirement from active service. 10 years after the original ceremony, Chun was invited to return to Fort Braxton as the keynote speaker for the annual Military Recognition Excellence Conference, where her story continued to inspire comprehensive recognition procedures. The conference had been established partly in response to the institutional changes her ceremony experience had generated, focusing on ensuring that all service members received appropriate acknowledgement for their contributions to military success. Her presentation to military personnel managers and ceremony coordinators emphasized the importance of systematic verification procedures and the courage required to address oversights when they were identified during recognition events. The audience included military personnel from throughout the world, demonstrating the international impact that her ceremony experience had generated on military recognition procedures and personnel acknowledgement policies. Her story had become part of international military cooperation programs, where Allied forces shared best practices for ensuring comprehensive recognition and unit loyalty during formal military ceremonies. The ceremony footage from her original exclusion and subsequent recognition was archived in military museums worldwide, serving as a permanent reminder of the importance of comprehensive inclusion in military recognition events. Military recognition procedures that had been implemented as a result of her ceremony experience prevented thousands of similar oversights over the following decades, ensuring that service members' contributions were consistently acknowledged. Her transformation from excluded ceremony participant to influential recognition policy advocate became a permanent example of how individual experiences with institutional limitations could inform systematic improvements that benefited entire military communities. The soldiers who had originally advocated for her inclusion continued to serve with distinction throughout their careers, carrying forward the unit loyalty and recognition advocacy that had characterized their response to her ceremony exclusion. Her legacy was permanently enhanced by the demonstration that individual courage and unit loyalty could ensure comprehensive recognition while creating institutional improvements that benefited future generations of military personnel. 15 years after the ceremony, Chen established a nonprofit organization dedicated to ensuring comprehensive recognition for military service members, extending her advocacy beyond active military service to veteran communities. The organization provided resources and advocacy for veterans who had experienced recognition oversights during their military service, helping to secure retroactive acknowledgement and correcting administrative errors that had excluded qualified personnel. Her work with veteran recognition issues revealed that her ceremony experience had been part of a broader pattern of administrative oversights that had affected thousands of service members over decades of military operations. The nonprofit's research documented systematic improvements in military recognition procedures that could be traced directly to the institutional changes her ceremony experience had generated throughout the military community. Her advocacy work with veteran communities included testimony before congressional committees responsible for military personnel policies, where her ceremony story continued to influence recognition procedures at the highest levels of government. The Veterans Recognition Program she established became a model for similar organizations worldwide, demonstrating how individual experiences with institutional limitations could inform advocacy that benefited entire communities of former service members. Her continued work with military recognition issues included consultation with military leadership on ceremony planning procedures, ensuring that her experience continued to inform institutional improvements decades after her retirement. The Chun Military Recognition Excellence Award was established by military personnel management organizations to recognize individuals who demonstrated exceptional commitment to ensuring comprehensive acknowledgement of military service and achievement. Her autobiography, published 20 years after the ceremony, provided detailed analysis of how individual experiences with institutional oversight could be transformed into opportunities for systematic improvement that benefited entire organizations. The book became required reading in military leadership development programs worldwide, demonstrating how personal adversity could be channeled into advocacy that created lasting positive impact on military institutions and procedures. Military academies incorporated her story into their core curricula, ensuring that future military leaders understood the importance of comprehensive recognition and the courage required to address institutional limitations when they affected personnel. Acknowledgement. Her speaking engagements at military education institutions continued throughout her post-military career, where she emphasized the importance of individual advocacy and collective action in ensuring appropriate recognition for military service. The ceremony planning procedures that had been influenced by her experience became standard practice throughout international military organizations, demonstrating the global impact of her advocacy for comprehensive recognition. Her research on military recognition procedures was published in academic journals focusing on organizational psychology and institutional improvement, extending the influence of her ceremony experience beyond military communities. The institutional changes that had emerged from her ceremony experience were documented in military history publications as examples of how individual courage could influence organizational improvement at the highest levels of military leadership. Her legacy continued to influence military recognition procedures through the personnel she had trained and mentored during her career, who carried forward her commitment to comprehensive acknowledgement and institutional improvement. 25 years after the ceremony, Chen was invited to serve on the Department of Defense Advisory Committee on Military Recognition and Personnel Acknowledgement, where her expertise continued to inform policy at the national level. Her service on the advisory committee included development of comprehensive recognition standards that were implemented across all military services, ensuring that her ceremony experience continued to influence personnel acknowledgement procedures. The committee's recommendations, informed by her experience with recognition oversight, were adopted as Department of Defense policy, creating lasting impact on military recognition procedures that extended to millions of service members. Her continued advocacy for comprehensive recognition influenced international military cooperation agreements, where allied forces adopted similar standards for ensuring appropriate acknowledgement of military service and achievement. The 30-year anniversary of her ceremony was commemorated with a special recognition event at Fort Braxton, where current military personnel learned about the institutional changes her experience had generated. The commemorative ceremony included presentation of new recognition standards that had been developed based on lessons learned from her experience, ensuring that her legacy continued to influence military procedures. Her influence on military recognition procedures was documented in official military histories as an example of how individual courage and unit loyalty could create institutional improvements that lasted for generations. The soldiers who had advocated for her inclusion in the original ceremony were honored as distinguished alumni of Fort Braxton, recognized for their demonstration of military values that had influenced institutional change. Her story became part of the permanent historical record at Fort Braxton, where future military personnel would learn about the importance of comprehensive recognition and the courage required to address institutional limitations. The ceremony where she had been initially excluded became a symbol of how military institutions could learn from their failures and implement improvements that prevented similar oversights for future service members. Her transformation from excluded ceremony participant to influential policy advocate demonstrated the potential for individual experiences with institutional limitations to inform systematic improvements that benefited entire military communities. The recognition procedures that had been influenced by her ceremony experience continued to evolve and improve, ensuring that her legacy would continue to impact military personnel acknowledgement for decades to come. Military personnel management professionals continued to study her ceremony experience as an example of how administrative oversights could be transformed into opportunities for institutional learning and systematic improvement. Her advocacy for comprehensive recognition influenced military personnel policies at the highest levels of government, ensuring that her ceremony experience continued to impact military institutions decades after the original event. The unit loyalty and collective action that had characterized her ceremony experience became legendary within military communities worldwide, inspiring similar demonstrations of military values and personnel advocacy. Her legacy extended beyond military recognition procedures to influence organizational psychology research on institutional improvement and individual advocacy within hierarchical organizations. The ceremony footage that had documented her exclusion and subsequent recognition continued to be used in leadership training programs, demonstrating the importance of moral courage and collective action in addressing institutional limitations. Her story became part of international military education exchanges, where Allied forces shared lessons learned about comprehensive recognition and institutional improvement based on individual advocacy. The recognition standards that had been developed based on her experience were adopted by military organizations worldwide, demonstrating the global impact of her advocacy for appropriate personnel acknowledgement. Her influence on military culture extended beyond recognition procedures to include broader understanding of individual responsibility for ensuring institutional effectiveness and personnel advocacy within military organizations. The nonprofit organization she had established continued to advocate for veteran recognition issues, ensuring that her commitment to comprehensive acknowledgement extended beyond her personal military service to benefit entire veteran communities. Her research and advocacy work continued to inform military personnel policies, demonstrating how individual experiences with institutional limitations could be transformed into systematic improvements that benefited future generations of service members. The ceremony where her unit had demonstrated collective loyalty by advocating for her inclusion became a permanent symbol of military values and institutional improvement through individual courage and collective action. Dr. Sarah Chin's legacy as an advocate for comprehensive military recognition continued to influence personnel acknowledgement procedures throughout her post-military career, ensuring that her ceremony experience would continue to benefit military personnel for decades to come. Her transformation from an overlooked soldier in a decommission ceremony to one of the most influential advocates for military recognition demonstrated how individual experiences with institutional oversight could be channeled into advocacy that created lasting positive impact on military culture and procedures. The soldiers who had refused to accept incomplete recognition during her ceremony became symbols of military unit loyalty and collective responsibility for ensuring appropriate acknowledgement of all service members regardless of administrative convenience or institutional limitations. Her story continued to inspire military personnel to advocate for comprehensive recognition while maintaining professional bearing and respect for military hierarchy, demonstrating how individual courage could address institutional limitations while strengthening military values and organizational effectiveness. The ceremony that had begun with administrative oversight had evolved into a permanent symbol of how military institutions could learn from their failures and implement improvements that ensured appropriate recognition for all personnel who had earned acknowledgement through their service and sacrifice. The applause that had originally recognized her inclusion in the honor formation continued to echo through military culture decades later, representing the ongoing commitment to comprehensive recognition and institutional improvement that her ceremony experience had generated throughout the military community worldwide.